bookish friends. I really need to start recording what I've read in March because we're almost halfway through the month. Today's the 13th and I have books due at the library. I'm actually going to try to do the books that I don't have physical copies of first. I did actually end up finishing Cities of Smoke and Starlight on the last day of February. Yay! But I didn't want to refilm my February wrap up to add that in. Yeah. I think I gave it 3 or 3.5 stars. The two main characters were just like always fighting at the beginning and it seemed rather forced. And if, as Charlene said, if you're gonna have two hot-tempered people in a relationship, I don't see how it could work because there wouldn't be anyone to be the reasonable one to be like, let's just come back when we're calmed down and actually have a real conversation. I liked the world building in the book, but not enough to continue the series. And then we finished Hudson Taylor, which is part of the Christian Heroes Then and Now series. And he was a missionary in China. And while we really did enjoy the story, I had a couple of problems with things Hudson Taylor did in general. My husband made the comment that he's referred to as so heavenly minded he's no earthly good, because he would be like, I'm going to trust God to provide money, and he has an employer who is distracted and scatterbrained, who specifically told him, tell me when I owe you your salary. And Hudson didn't honor that. He's like, no, I'm gonna trust God to provide my salary when I need it. And I'm like, you're bordering on testing God there, Hudson, and you're not honoring the thing that your employer told you to do. So there were a couple times like that, but we're still going to continue through the series. We did have a DNF, Front Porch Tales. My friend Shatona had sent this in that big box of books that she sent me. She had put this in that big box of books I hauled last month to just finish filling the box, and I tried reading it to my kids. They thought it was kind of boring, so I just decided to quit it because we're getting toward the end of the school year, and yeah, we have like 2 months and a bit left of school, and I just wanted to focus on books that we're liking. But they did really like the first Chosen Kids book. This one's Encounter at the Dunes. I think they go to some state park or national park. So the Chosen Kids Encounter at the Dunes. I think this is, COVID is just ending and people are finally getting back to normal, so the aunt is going to start taking the kids on adventures. They're on their way to the beach in California, and they come across this store where there's an angel, and he says that they've been chosen by God to help capture these evil beings, and I don't know exactly what they do with them, but yeah, they kept asking me to read more and more and more and more, so we got through this one really quickly. We're actually reading book 2 right now. It's kind of middle grade sort of fantasy. And then I have 2 books I need to return to the library today. First, I read Words on Fire by Jennifer A. Nielsen. This is set in 1893 in Lithuania, when it's occupied by the Russians. Lithuanian language and newspapers and books have all been outlawed because they're trying to turn the Lithuanians into Russians, and they think if they can kill their culture, they'll become compliant communist Russians. And our main character, Audra, her parents, she didn't know, but they were working on smuggling books. Her father was a traveling magician, and so he would help deliver books from one place to another. And the Cossacks show up and arrest her parents, and she has to flee, and she ends up delivering a book and getting kind of roped into book smuggling. I thought it was all very interesting and kind of fascinating, but it had what a lot of middle grade culture books do, and that's, oh, the young people, we're the only ones who can make this thing, whatever it is, happen. And the adults are like, we're trying to keep you safe, and they're like, no, we don't care if it's dangerous, we're gonna do the thing anyway. Yeah, I don't like that middle grade trope, so that took it down a bit for me. And then we're going from historical fiction to future. This is Moon Garden. This is one of the group reads for middle grade March this year. This is set in the middle of the 25th century. The plants on Earth became poisonous, and so they had to flee to the off-world colonies. There's one on the moon, there's one on Mars, there's one on Venus. Sorry, my cameraman. A little antsy. Anyway, this is in the future. And this has another middle grade trope I don't like, which is that all adults are against you. Like, the main character's parents, she thinks that they're just so wrapped up in being number whisperers that if she's not a number whisperer, they'll have like nothing to do with her, and she doesn't think she has any magic at all, and that's even worse. And so she doesn't talk to her parents. She tries to avoid talking to her parents or manipulate her parents into not noticing what's going on. And then all of the teachers are trying to hush up the garden and stuff, and again, I thought the world building was good, but the fact that they're breaking curfew and sneaking around and lying and skipping class is not a good example for 12-year-olds. It just, yeah. I wish authors would take it as a challenge to show healthy relationships between preteens and teens and adults. Like, I remember being that age and being angsty and thinking that my parents couldn't understand what I'm going through, and now that I'm a parent, I'm like, yeah, that's coming. Completely neglecting the fact that, yes, my parents were once 12 or 16 or whatever. Anyway, except for what I've been reading to my kids, not the best reading month so far. But I'll be back with an update. I hope to get a lot read in the next week. Actually, we're going to go see my in-laws, and that's a long trip, and my kids are going to be having fun playing with their cousins, and we're not going to be doing school, so I should get a lot more reading done than I have been. So I'll be back with an update. Hey, editing Ashley here. I somehow deleted the first minute of my next clip. So to catch you up, I was going over the two ebooks I had read for the month, and I was talking about Once Upon a Tome by Oliver Darkshire. He's a rare bookseller in England, and yeah, it was just kind of his creative memoirs about how he got into the business and dealing with customers, and I think it covers about 20 years of him working as a rare bookseller, maybe in London, and yeah, I have more thoughts, so I'll go over to those. I was a little uncomfortable with some of the things he talked about, because he does mention pornographic images, vintage ones and such, and he was discreet about it, but it still made me uncomfortable. And then because he's gay, he did make some comments about testing how his coworkers would deal with that. And then during the part where he talks about not selling to certain people, like not wanting to have books in the hands of Nazis, and then he also talked about homophobes. And as a conservative Christian, I'm not sure if he would consider me under that, because I think homosexuality is wrong. On the one hand, if somebody's not a professing believer, there's not really, I can't call it out as sin because they are willingly sinning, I guess. But yeah, so I don't think I can actually recommend the book. I do wish I had read it in a physical form, because there were footnotes at the end of every section, and by the time I got to the end of every section, I didn't really know what the footnotes were referring to. So that was that one. On the other hand, I read Magnify. This was the pick for March for the Tales from Distant Lands book club, and I think I gave this one 4 stars. It was a bit slow to get into, but I did like that one of the main characters was a dragon, and then the ending felt kind of rushed. I do want to continue the series. Not sure how high that is on my priority list, but yeah, there were faith elements in it, and like I said, one of the main characters was a dragon, and I'm interested to see what the author does with that, because she did it as dragons are sentient and can talk and have feelings and stuff, but they don't have a soul. So I'm just curious as to what she does with that. And now we'll get to the ones I actually have physically. I don't think I actually still have these in the order I read them. They're kind of in order from big ones are on the bottom, small ones are on top. I did read Anne of the Island for the Year of Maud read along, and I really loved this one. There were times when I wanted to shake Anne because she was being a little fool, but she calls herself by the end of the book. But on the other hand, I enjoyed the reading. It was very atmospheric. She is in college during this one. Not much else I can say. 3rd book in the series. And then I had picked up this book a while ago, and it got lost. It got lost between larger books on my TBR shelf. And then I found it, and I'm like, hey, you know what? It's middle grade. I'll pick it up, read it to my kids, and my boys loved it. So we've actually ordered book 2 to read. This one, Dan gets in trouble, runs into this old lady while on his skateboard, and so he has to do community service at Eckert House, which is kind of like a historical museum, and he finds a mystery, and we just kept wanting to read more and more chapters. For Whom the Sun Sings. This was on my 25 to read in 2025 list. Don't read the synopsis. I'm still kind of like, what did I read? I think it would fall under dystopian, but there's not much I can say without giving away spoilers in the book. It is written, people tagged it as middle grade. I would not maybe give this to a 12-year-old, but not anyone younger than that. I wouldn't put this in the hands of a 12-year-old. Probably more like 13, 14 at least. It does get quite violent, especially toward the end, because peace must be kept severely. And I'm not sure the 12-year-old actually acted like a 12-year-old. Sometimes he seemed maybe a bit mature for a 12-year-old, but then again, I don't have a 12-year-old. My oldest is 10. But if you read this book, please, I want to talk about it. I want to process it. And I had pulled Owls. This was another one on my 25 to read in 2025 list. And it's just, each spread has a, like, I think watercolor illustration of an owl and then a little bit about it. The illustrations are 5 stars. The actual writing maybe got a bit new agey for me in some spots, so I think I gave the writing 3 stars, so overall 4 stars. It's fun to flip through at least. And I read The Word Reclaimed. It actually took me quite a while to get through this book. I kept setting it aside and reading other things, but I did eventually pick it up and finish it. Once I got to the last like third, then it really picked up and I finished it pretty quickly. I don't know if it's because it's written by a guy or if it just had too much like military terms and stuff. Also, the back of the book only talks about one of the perspectives, and there's another perspective that's completely different. They do end up intersecting eventually, but not until toward the very end. And so that threw me off, especially because I think we had like 4 chapters before we even met the other character. But I don't know if I will continue the series or not. I picked this up, I think, on the Black Friday sale from Enclave, and this was only $5. So maybe if I can get the other 2 for $5, I'll think about continuing the series. Otherwise, I don't know. And then I read The Lost Property Office. This is it. I would consider this middle grade. I'm actually thinking about letting my 8-year-old and 10-year-old listen to the audiobook. And what can I say without giving it away? Jack is in London with his sister and his mother and doesn't quite know what's going on with Dad. And Mom is going to supposedly fill out a whole bunch of paperwork, and he is supposed to be watching his little sister, and she thinks he sees their dad and takes off. And between like finding her and them stumbling into some things, they end up on this wild adventure through London, and I quite enjoyed it, and I do plan on continuing that series. And the last one for fiction is Mrs. Polifax, Innocent Tourist. This is book 13. She ends up going with Farrell, her friend, from her first CIA assignment, and they end up in the Middle East. I'm not sure if it says exactly, but they're trying to meet up with this guy who has this supposed manuscript from a man that Farrell knew who died, and they're trying to get it back to America to be published because it's anti-Muslim. Oh, they go to Jordan, and they're trying to get the manuscript out of Iraq. I gave this 5 stars. It was my favorite book of the month, and not too much I can say about it because it is book 13. I only have one Mrs. Polifax left, which I'm kind of excited about to cross off a series, but also kind of sad that there will be no new Mrs. Polifax material after that. And then I did squeeze in Well Lived. I read a book within a month of buying it by Sally Clarkson, Reflections from Oxford. Definitely the first good chunk of this book is definitely reflective. It's not really instructive like her homeschooling books or her life-giving series, Life-Giving Home, Life-Giving Table, and other things. I did still glean some things, and I would love to be like Sally when I'm 70. And it was interesting because when they first moved to Oxford is when COVID hit, and they had only planned on being there for a few months, and instead they ended up being there more than a year before they could leave the UK. And this is really chock full of photographs and pictures of Sally. I do think they're maybe a bit dark, and then some of them are fine. So I don't know. I really enjoyed it. Not my favorite Sally Clarkson, and but still worth picking up if you like her writing. And technically I read these on the 1st of April, but I'm going to talk about them in this one because I'm reading a chapter from the Life-Giving Home every month. So for April, this was one of Sarah's chapters, and I don't know if it's just because I didn't have enough sleep, but it wasn't really grabbing me. I didn't really glean much. I do prefer Sally's chapters over Sarah's, but she was mostly talking about the legacy of faith and how her parents incorporated habits and prayer and music and atmosphere to instill in Sarah and her siblings a lifelong faith, and just some ideas I could incorporate in my own home. And then finally I read the March pages out of The Country Diary of an Edwardian Lady. She just incorporates observations about the weather and what's blooming, animals, birds. I mean, birds are animals, specifically a lot about birds. And then she has poetry and quotes about the month and the season, and it's just lovely. And nature journal goals. And sorry that I didn't really go too much into detail about any of the books. I'm trying to film this quickly so I can get it out on time. Just didn't have as much time to film this month, and it was a lot of books to get through, although I only read 14 books this month versus the 17 last month. And I think I'm making my TBRs way too long. I'm in the Distant Lands book club, and I'm doing the Year of Maud read along. And so I had 10 books on my TBR. I didn't finish all of them for March. And I have 9 on my TBR for April, and it's just too much. Out of the 14 books I read last month in March, 9 of them were on my TBR. 3 of them were books I read aloud to my kids, and that means I only had 2 books that were mood rating, and it's not how I want my months to go. So I think, because like I said, I am doing pretty committed to the Year of Maud read along at this point, and the Distant Lands book club, I think for my next TBR I'm only gonna pick 3 additional books, maybe have a pile of possibilities, and yeah, only commit to 5 books, maybe 6 if I'm needing to put a nonfiction, because I always like having a nonfiction that I'm slowly making my way through. And yeah, I can give a quick update on my book bingo. Also, my 25 to read in 2025, I read 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm on track to finish by the end of the year if I just do another 2 each month. So here's what it looks like. I almost have my first bingo. I've done a buddy read. I've read 10 books I own. I've read 4 out of 10 Kindle books. Haven't done any readathons, though I guess I did do middle grade March. Didn't quite black that out. I have finished 1 out of 3 series. I've read a new to me author. I haven't read any from my favorite author backlist, unless we could count the Anna Green Gables books. I've read a book I've owned more than a year. I haven't done a YouTube giveaway. That will probably come in either July or October. I've finished 25 in 2025. I am on track to do that by the end of the year. I read 1 out of 3 Wodehouse books. Then there's The Free Space. New Testament's coming this summer. I have read 9 out of 10 library books. That was one good thing about March, is I did read 5 library books, 3 physical, an audio, and an ebook. I haven't read a tome yet. I have read 6 nonfiction, read a book in 24 hours. I've done 3 rereads. I haven't read any Agatha Christie. I have not read a whole series. I haven't read a short story collection, but I do have one on my April TBR. I read a book within 30 days of purchasing. I've done a friend recommendation, and I have not done a kid pick, which kid pick would also give me a bingo. And then, like I said, my favorite book of the month was Mrs. Polfax, Innocent Tourist. Let me know if you have any favorite books from March. This is most of what I've read, except I've returned to library books. I did a book on audio, and I did 2 ebooks. So, yeah. Not too bad. Let me know, like I said, what you've been reading. And till next time, happy reading.